What if I told you that Earth was once governed by a completely different species from our own? A reptilian civilization that left deep marks on our history, our genetics, and even our most primitive fears? Have you ever wondered why so many? Ancient cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, speak of serpent gods who descended from the skies to rule humanity. What you are about to discover may seem like conspiracy theory, but the evidence is so consistent and scattered throughout human history that ignoring it would be closing our eyes to one of the greatest curiosities of our existence. We are talking about archaeological evidence, ancient texts, genetic anomalies, and contemporary reports that point to a reality much more complex than we were taught. Prepare yourself for a journey through time, where we will explore from the most ancient civilizations to the present day, connecting dots that official history prefers to keep separate. I am not asking you to believe everything you will hear, but rather to keep your mind open to possibilities that could revolutionize our understanding of who we really are and where we came from. Think about it. For some reason, the serpent symbol appears in the myth of creation, temptation, and the beginning of human consciousness, as narrated in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and so similar in indigenous beliefs of South America and Asian religions. What could have caused the universalization of this mystery? Conventional science points to the easy association between snakes and the fear instinct. But would fear alone justify such detailed mythologies about reptilian beings descending from the heavens or living in hidden cities beneath the earth? I invite you to keep an open mind as we advance, because the more we investigate, the more questions seem to arise. The first great revelation emerges when we examine how these narratives about serpents and reptilian beings appear consistently in the most diverse human cultures, even without any possibility of contact between them. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were constantly represented with the sacred cobra on their foreheads, known as the uraeus. But this was not just decorative symbolism. Hieroglyphic texts describe a royal lineage that possessed blood of the serpent. Gods, conferring divine authority through this reptilian heritage. The pharaohs genuinely believed that their ability to govern came directly from this connection with ancestral reptilian beings. Mummies of pharaohs have been found with cranial anomalies that do not correspond to the normal human pattern. Elongated skulls, larger eye sockets, and bone structures that suggest adaptations for different environmental conditions, as if they belonged to a genetically differentiated lineage. Pharaoh Akhenaten presented physical characteristics so unusual that Egyptologists still speculate about his true genetic origin. His representations show an extremely elongated skull, disproportional limbs, and facial features that do not appear in any other period of Egyptian art. During his reign, Egypt experienced inexplicable technological advances and astronomical knowledge that was only rediscovered centuries later. Reports of contact with reptilian beings are not an invention of recent centuries. In Vedic texts, we find surprisingly clear descriptions of the Nagas, beings half man, half serpent, living in subterranean realms or in the heavens. We are not talking about children's tales, but scriptures held as historical in one of humanity's oldest spiritual traditions. These beings, according to legends, could assume human form, living among us, influencing kings' decisions and even the world's order itself. The Vedic texts do not treat the Nagas as mythological creatures. They are described as an advanced civilization with superior technology, which possessed flying vehicles called vimanas and maintained bases in different parts of the world. Most intriguing is that these texts describe with scientific precision concepts that our science only recently understood, including atomic structure, different dimensions of reality, and genetic manipulation. African traditions cite the Chitauri, reptilian entities that supposedly gave rise to great dynasties and occult powers. Credo Mutwa, a South African Sangoma and guardian of ancestral traditions, dedicated his life to preserving stories about these reptilian beings that supposedly shaped human civilization from its beginnings. According to his narratives, the Chitauri were masters of genetic manipulation and created different variations of the human species for specific purposes. American peoples described Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a god seen descending from the sky, bringing knowledge and forever changing the history of villages. But records about Quetzalcoatl go beyond mythology. Aztec texts describe him as a physical being who possessed superior technology and established a hybrid royal lineage. The Aztecs maintained detailed records about his physical characteristics, his teachings, and how he could assume different forms according to necessity. In ancient Europe, records about dragons and giant serpents, which sometimes could speak, go beyond fantasy and enter the realm of the sacred. In Norse mythology, the serpent Jormungandr was described as a being of superior intelligence who possessed knowledge about the world's destiny. Celtic legends speak of serpent beings who lived in sacred mountains and occasionally interacted with humans, sharing ancestral wisdom. In ancient China, emperors claimed to descend from dragons, which in Chinese culture are essentially intelligent reptilian beings. The Yellow Emperor, considered the founder of Chinese civilization, was described as a hybrid being who possessed both human and draconian characteristics. Ancient texts speak of his ability to fly, his extraordinary longevity, and his impossible knowledge for the time about medicine, agriculture, and astronomy. For centuries, scholars tried to fit these accounts into mythical categories, suggesting they were merely reflections of fear of the unknown or fascination with powerful animals. However, more recent research within the field of alternative archaeology and discrete study clubs about UFOs raises the hypothesis that these peoples may have actually recorded real encounters with reptilian-appearing beings, whether from other planets, other dimensions, or civilizations much earlier than ours. What makes these narratives even more intriguing is the consistency with which they describe these reptilian beings' ability to assume human form. We are not talking about one or two isolated cultures. We are talking about dozens of civilizations that all describe this same shape-changing ability, using terminologies and details that are surprisingly similar when we analyze royal lineages. Throughout human history, we find patterns that defy conventional explanations. European royal families, Oriental dynasties, ancient African lineages, all maintain traditions of endogamous marriages that supposedly preserved divine blood. But what exactly was this divinity that needed to be preserved through such specific genetic practices? The apparently instinctive capacity of certain families to maintain power through generations, using strategies that seem to go beyond normal human intelligence, suggests a form of knowledge that operates differently from typical human psychology. The ease with which they manipulate conflicts, control resources, and maintain populations in states of dependence reveals behavioral patterns that are consistent with superior intelligence adapted for mass control. But let us go beyond historical speculation and examine concrete physical evidence. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed anomalies that mainstream science prefers to ignore. Skeletons with unusual cranial characteristics have been found at various archaeological sites around the world, presenting consistent patterns that suggest a different human subspec, i.e. Stat in Peru. Elongated skulls found in Paracas show characteristics that do not fit normal human anatomy. These skulls have cranial capacity up to 25% larger than human skulls, different bone structures, and characteristics that suggest adaptations for a completely different environment. Dr. Brian Forster discovered that while human, skulls are formed by 3 main bone plates. These elongated skulls are formed by only 2 plates, a characteristic that does not appear in any known human population. Mitochondrial DNA analyses performed on these skulls revealed genetic sequences that do not completely correspond to the known human genome. Some sequences are so different that they suggest a completely separate origin from the human evolutionary tree. These discoveries raise fundamental questions about our understanding of human evolution and about the possibility of external intervention in our development as a species. In Romania and other European archaeological sites, excavations have revealed skeletons with similar characteristics. Elongated skulls, unusual bone structures, and in some cases, evidence of artificial genetic modification in periods where supposedly there was no technology for such interventions. The dating of these sites goes back to very ancient periods of human history, suggesting that these anomalies are not recent aberrations. But physical evidence is not limited to archaeological discoveries. Throughout history, births of children with distinct reptilian characteristics have been documented. Scales on the skin, eyes that change color, body temperature different from normal human temperature. Many of these cases were recorded by doctors and are well documented, although rarely discussed publicly due to disturbing implications. In modern medicine, there exists a condition known as ichthyosis, which causes thickening and scaling of the skin similar to scales. However, some cases present characteristics that go far beyond the known medical condition. Patients with increased sensory capabilities, resistance to extreme temperatures, and neurological patterns that suggest significant differences in brain functioning. Dr. Carl Sagan speculated about the possibility that the human brain maintains ancestral memories from when we were reptiles. He identified what he called the reptilian brain, the oldest part of our nervous system that controls basic instincts like territoriality, aggression, and hierarchical dominance. Recent research in neuroscience has revealed that certain people possess unusual neurological activity in this region, showing patterns different from the human norm. These people frequently demonstrate increased sensory capabilities, facility in psychological manipulation, and an instinctive understanding of power structures. Studies on psychopathy have revealed that individuals with this condition possess structural differences in the brain that bring them closer to the ancestral reptilian pattern. Lack of empathy, predatory behavior, and facility in assuming control. Positions are characteristics that appear both in psychopaths and in ancient records about reptilian beings. Most disturbing is that these psychopathic characteristics appear with disproportionate frequency in positions of political and economic power. Studies indicate that political leaders and corporate executives present psychopathic traits at much higher rates than the general population. Would this be just coincidence? Or is there something deeper happening in our social structure? When we examine world political history through this perspective, disturbing patterns emerge. Wars that seem orchestrated to always benefit the same groups. Economic systems that concentrate wealth in ways that defy purely economic explanations. Policies that consistently prioritize population control over genuine human welfare. Patterns suggest a form of intelligence that operates with long-term objectives that transcend individual human generations. An intelligence that understands mass psychology instinctively and can manipulate entire societies through techniques that seem to go beyond conventional human knowledge. Over the past decades, thousands of people around the world have reported direct encounters with reptilian beings. We are not talking about isolated stories or individual hallucinations. We are talking about consistent reports that share specific details, coming from people who never had contact with each other, but describe surprisingly similar physical characteristics. Height above human average, skin that can assume normal human appearance but occasionally reveals scales, eyes that change shape especially under stress, different body temperature, superior physical strength, and increased sensory capabilities. What makes these reports even more intriguing is that many come from respectable people in society. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, university professors who have much to lose by sharing controversial experiences. Arizona Wilder claimed to have been, raised from childhood to serve reptilian elites, and provided detailed descriptions about rituals and practices of these hybrid lineages. Her descriptions include details about shape changing, about rituals involving consumption of specific hormones to maintain human characteristics, and about a complex hierarchy that connects different powerful families globally. Although her accounts may seem fantastic, specific elements of her descriptions were later confirmed by other independent witnesses. Descriptions about specific places, specific people, and practices that were not public knowledge when she made her initial statements. Kathy O'Brien, another person who claims direct experiences with these lineages, described mind control technology that was only publicly recognized decades later through declassified documents about programs like MK-Ultra. Her descriptions about reptilian capabilities of psychological manipulation are consistent with what we know about advanced behavioral control techniques. Modern technology allows us to examine evidence that was not available to previous generations. Spectral analysis of videos can reveal details about body temperature and other physical characteristics not visible to the naked eye. Some researchers have discovered unusual thermal patterns in certain public figures that suggest significant physiological differences from the human norm. Videos showing politicians and celebrities having moments where their physical appearance seems to change subtly have become the object of intense speculation. Eyes that change color or shape, body movements that do not seem completely human, reactions to stimuli that suggest physiological differences. Although many can be explained by technical artifacts, the quantity and consistency of these incidents suggest more intriguing possibilities. Research on adrenochrome, a substance that can be extracted from human blood under certain conditions, has revealed properties that may be related to maintaining specific genetic characteristics. Although scientific research on this substance is limited, some evidence suggests effects on longevity and on the expression of latent genetic characteristics. When we connect these discoveries with historical records about ancient elite practices, a disturbing pattern emerges. Rituals involving blood, practices that supposedly maintain divine characteristics, and traditions that were secretly transmitted through specific generations. Family lineages that maintain practices consistent with preserving particular genetic characteristics through endogamous marriages and specific rituals. Recent advances in genetics have revealed that human DNA contains sequences that do not possess clear predecessors in the evolutionary tree. Genes that appeared suddenly in human history without clear evolutionary explanation. Dr. Francis Crick proposed the theory of directed panspermia to explain these anomalies, suggesting that life on Earth may have been deliberately seeded by extraterrestrial intelligence. Studies on the FOXP2 gene, crucial for human language development, revealed significant modifications approximately 200,000 years ago. These modifications appeared very rapidly in evolutionary terms, suggesting possible external intervention. Interestingly, this period coincides with many ancient narratives about when advanced beings began to intervene in human evolution. Human mitochondrial DNA analyses have revealed population bottlenecks at specific periods in history, moments where the human population was drastically reduced and then expanded rapidly with new genetic characteristics. These patterns are consistent with ancient reports about global catastrophes followed by directed recodify by advanced beings. Dr. Lloyd Pye identified more than 200 human genes that do not possess predecessors in other species. These genes appear suddenly in the human lineage without clear evolutionary explanation. His hypothesis was that they were artificially introduced by an advanced intelligence that possessed superior knowledge about genetic manipulation. Research on non-coding DNA, previously called junk DNA, has revealed that these sequences may contain complex information that we still do not understand. Some researchers speculate that this DNA may contain historical records about our origins. Waiting for appropriate technology for complete decoding, certain human genetic sequences show evidence of artificial modification, patterns that do not appear in natural evolution, but are consistent with deliberate genetic engineering, as if our species had been designed for specific characteristics by an intelligence that understood genetics much better than we currently understand. If this genetic modification really occurred, what was the purpose? One possibility is that we were created as a hybrid species, designed to serve specific purposes for our reptilian creators. This would explain unusual human characteristics among other terrestrial species. Our capacity to work cooperatively in large groups, our natural tendency to obey hierarchies, and our psychological need for external leadership. Another possibility is that we were designed as an evolutionary experiment, an attempt to create a species that combined reptilian intelligence with mammalian adaptability. This would explain why we possess both characteristics that connect us with our reptilian brain and emotional capabilities typical of mammals. Perhaps the most disturbing explanation is that we were created as a source of specific resources that our reptilian creators need for their own survival. Resources that may include not only physical labor, but also emotional energy, genetic material, or other biological substances they cannot produce naturally. This theory gains credibility when we examine historical patterns of how human elites treat common populations. The ease with which they initiate wars that decimate millions, the apparent lack of empathy in policies that cause mass suffering, the constant focus on maintaining populations in states of fear, anger, and desperation. If certain human elites really possess reptilian genetic heritage, it may be that they see the rest of humanity as resources to be managed and harvested as needed. This perspective would explain behaviors that seem incomprehensible when analyzed through normal human psychology. In the modern world, this control may have evolved from physical to psychological. Instead of governing directly through force, mind control systems that maintain populations in a state of voluntary compliance. Systems that exploit our basic genetic programming for hierarchical obedience. Modern media, with its capacity to influence thought and behavior en masse, would be a perfect tool for this control. Global media ownership is concentrated in a very small number of corporations, many controlled by families that trace back to ancient royal lineages. Educational systems that emphasize obedience over critical thinking, economic systems that maintain the majority independence, and political systems that offer illusion of choice while keeping power structures unchanged, all consistent with sophisticated population management techniques. We are living in a period where these control techniques may be beginning to fail. The internet has allowed access to information previously restricted to elites. Common people can now research ancient history, genetic analyses, and archaeological evidence that were previously inaccessible. This democratization of information may be forcing changes in control strategy. If human populations are awakening to the possibility of large-scale manipulation, the controllers may need to reveal more of their true nature or implement more direct forms of control. Some researchers suggest that we are entering a period of gradual revelation, where the truth about our origins will be slowly released to prepare humanity for significant changes. Others believe we are approaching a moment of confrontation, where humanity will have to choose between continued subjugation or active resistance. Today, I do not come here to affirm that all these accounts are true, but we cannot deny the provocation they impose on logic. Would these be coincidences born of collective imagination, or clues to a deeper history, a hidden truth that human curiosity still needs to completely unravel? The amount of evidence we have examined suggests that our official history is incomplete. Whether through ancient records about serpent gods, archaeological discoveries of anomalous skeletons, inexplicable genetic anomalies, or contemporary reports of encounters with reptilian beings, there exists a pattern that cannot be easily ignored. Mystery of possible reptilian domination of Earth is not just historical curiosity. It is a question that may have profound implications for how we understand our nature as a species, our place in the cosmos, and our future as a civilization. Perhaps we can never definitively prove whether reptilian beings controlled or still control our planet. But the exercise of examining this possibility forces us to question accepted narratives, to examine evidence with open minds, and to consider that our reality may be much more complex than we imagine. The story we have explored connects apparently scattered points through millennia of human experience. From the first records about serpent gods to modern genetic discoveries, from archaeological anomalies to contemporary reports, there exists a common thread that suggests non-human influence on the evolution of our species that we should not accept. Everything is absolute truth, but we should keep our minds open to possibilities that transcend conventional explanations. Curiosity about our true origins is one of the most fundamentally human characteristics, and this curiosity leads us to explore even the most extraordinary theories. What do you think about these possibilities? Do the patterns we have examined resonate with your own perception about our history and our nature as a species? Is there something in your experience that aligns with these theories about ancient reptilian influence? The journey in search of truth about our origins is far from over. Each new archaeological discovery, each advance in genetics, each revelation of previously secret historical documents can add new pieces to this fascinating puzzle. If you found this exploration intriguing, consider subscribing to the channel and activating notifications. We continue investigating the deepest mysteries of human experience, always with open minds and critical spirit. Our next video will explore evidence about underground bases and their possible connection with ancient reptilian civilizations. Until our next investigation together, keep your curiosity alive and your mind open to possibilities that may revolutionize our understanding of who we really are and what our true place in the cosmos is. The truth may be closer than we imagine, waiting only for us to have the courage to look beyond conventional explanations.